Hey, Michelle. Well, thank you for joining me to talk a little bit about this brand new Mission to Mars curriculum. And I have to say, thanks for helping be part of the development of the curriculum and the first one to actually try some of these activities. But before we get into that, let's tell everybody a little bit about you. So, where are you located? What do you teach?
Hi, I am Michelle Bogdan, and I teach in Cleveland, Ohio. Thanks for having me here today. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed implementing and working with the Mission to Mars, and am excited to do more with it. So I teach fifth through eighth grade science at a private school in Cleveland. Our school's main focus is on engaging students in what we call the natural learning cycle. So students are practicing experiential learning while also building content knowledge at the same time. So all of this really went together perfectly with the Space Club curriculum and complemented our mission. We are looking to really immerse students in the essential structure of the discipline. So this was just awesome and really what we're looking to do. And I think what most teachers are always looking to do when they're teaching. So a little bit about my background and what I do with STEM would be that many of my students, we do science fair. So we have science fair and engineering projects that we take to district and state science day. So we work on that for about a 4-month time period. I've helped develop fourth and fifth grade creative problem solving curriculum, which is often kind of that engineering design process thinking.
Yeah.
In the past, I've designed a remote summer camp called Epic Engineering, and that was during the pandemic to kind of get students to do some challenges with materials around the house. So I really enjoy just kind of diving into big projects and getting the kids thinking as a scientist or engineer.
I love it. And how long have you been in this position with these students?
This is my 7th year teaching fifth through eighth grade science. So I've had a lot of opportunity to kind of develop it how I want to, and I'm still really fine tuning kind of our curriculum and always changing it up. So this was a really fun, new step that we did this year that I'm excited to keep going throughout the next couple years.
Perfect. So the teachers watching this will have just finished the kind of the details of the curriculum, right? So we have the
Mhm.
teacher guide and the student handouts, and there's a materials list and all the things. And so I really just wanted to sit down and talk with you and give them that, I guess, the pedagogical side, right? Like the actual implementation of what it looks like in the classroom. So let's just start with, how did you run Mission to Mars with your students? What did that look like?
I think the really cool thing about Mission to Mars is there's so many different ways you can kind of make the curriculum your own. So the way that we did it was I did it with fifth and eighth grade students first. We did this during our normal science class period time. It was a block period that we have 3 times a week for 90 minutes.
Nice. Yeah.
We have about 11 to 15 students in the class. So I grouped them into groups of 3. And each mission, I would say we took about 2 to 3 block periods. Most of the time it was 2. More challenging missions, we did extended to 3. We use the student handouts. I created like a big packet for them so that they knew that they had that Space Club packet with them at all times. One thing I think would be really cool in the future would be to put that packet into a little bit like a 3-prong folder where they could put their mission patch on top of it. So that would be maybe something I'd do in the future. I use the Google Classroom as a portal for our Space Club information. This was kind of a spot to find readings and supplementary videos that you provided through the teacher guide. But now with having the teacher slideshow, I wouldn't need that portion. So that's kind of all in that teacher slideshow. So that will be really, really helpful to have kind of on the board for the students to see while also they're reading in the student guidebook together. So we
Yeah.
tried to, I tried to kind of make it so that, they could visualize it on the board and we could talk about it together, but then they could also kind of read it on their student worksheets.
And so you were using like the printed, right? So they had like a printed copy and they were writing and drawing their ideas, right?
Yes, we used the printed copy.
Okay. And then the digital version. So what was in Google Classroom? Were you actually assigning them work in Google Classroom?
So in Google Classroom, for example, with Mission 1, we had like the Flipgrid link so they could get into the classroom and go to the Flipgrid to record their video.
Oh, okay.
I would put up the mission in Mission 1 in the classroom, put up the mission reading, the videos that supplemented it. If there was any content reading that needed to be done, that would all be in the classroom and projected on the board.
Got it. Okay, so you also use Flipgrid, to have them do, like, those team videos?
I did, yes. Yeah, that was really easy to do as well. Was able to just log into Flipgrid, assign them the task, and then add it to the classroom. And then they were able to kind of click right where they needed to record, and that's how they recorded their videos.
Okay, perfect, that makes sense. Alright, so now let's take one of the sessions and walk teachers through what maybe a typical session looked like. So how did you kick off that meeting? And you said it was 2 to 3 sessions, right, for each mission?
Yes. So depending on the mission, I know, mission 1 and mission 5 aren't just like engineering challenges, so they're a little
Right.
bit different. But the first day was often learning about the mission, gathering the background information. We brainstormed with teammates, developed designs, and possibly started building. It kind of just each mission was just kind of organically fell how it was going to fall and how much more time they needed. And then the second day was usually designed and designated for building, testing, and reflecting. And sometimes if we ran out of time, we would maybe carry the reflection over into some individual homework time. So each session, you really had to be kind of flexible. You couldn't
Yeah.
plan it out perfectly because, you know, each each thinking time was a little bit different, so for the students, so the brainstorming and the chatting with the teammates. So that was kind of fun to be able to just be so flexible with it. um, yeah, so that was kind of the setup of the missions in our classroom.
And then to prepare for each mission, what did you need to do to kind of get ready for that day?
For preparing, I did take a little time to prep, but really it wasn't too bad. Everything was mostly prepped for me through the teacher guide. So it was just kind of getting the classroom ready, which again wouldn't need to be happening anymore with the teacher slides, and getting the materials ready, which I kind of knew ahead of time what we needed. So I had the students, each group had a bucket that their materials went into each time.
Mm.
So I would just prep the buckets with materials, and then the students were in charge of kind of cleaning up those buckets and saving any materials that needed to be saved, and then returning the buckets. And then I would just replace what materials were needed. So I'd also sometimes test a couple things out if needed ahead of time. So I have to save a little time for getting really comfortable with the curriculum, having the teacher guide with you as you go. But again, it kind of just flows really well. So you're able to just kind of do it like right on the spot too.
And are there any missions you recommend a teacher try ahead of time, like maybe any of the engineering challenges that were a little bit trickier?
Probably mission 7 with the rubber band car. That
Yeah.
one is a little bit tricky. So getting some practice and using that in the materials. I practiced a little bit more with the supplies for the wearable device because we do circuits, but we use some different supplies in our classroom sometimes. So I practiced with that a little bit just so that I was really comfortable to make sure that the students were successful with that.
For wearable device, I'm curious, where did they end up wearing them? Like, what was the popular thing to do?
So that was a really fun. Actually, one of my students came up with a mask like clip. So he
Oh,
created it on his mask that it would be a clip. So, of course, with the pandemic, that
yeah.
was a creative idea. Bracelets, headbands. They liked that one. That was a really cool mission. I liked that mission because the way we had our groupings, there was a really good. I was able to differentiate a little bit for the groups depending on how successful they were with the circuits.
Mhm.
So one group was just soaring. So they each had to make their own device, but one group was struggling a little bit more. So I challenged them just to make one working device. So that was really cool that you could kind of differentiate the instruction as you needed to for your students. And with that one, what was interesting with that one was some of the students that were really successful with the circuits weren't the typical students that you always, you know, get it right away.
Yeah.
And the ones that you sometimes think would get it right away needed a little more support. So it just kind of gets everyone thinking in a different mode, and you get to kind of get to know your students a little bit more. And I thought that was really cool.
And for that one, I know sometimes I've done, like, paper circuits, and the supplies can be frustrating. Like, if you've used the conductive tape, it, like, tears and rips, and on this one, we recommended using aluminum foil as an option. What kind of supplies did you end up using for the wearable device?
We use the aluminum foil. I had them do just a plain like paper circuit
Okay, you did.
beforehand because we hadn't done circuits yet with fifth grade. Um, and we used aluminum foil with that as well, just on the paper, and made the little square, and they got it. So that
Nice.
was awesome. And then the when they were doing the wearable device, there was a little bit of frustration, I would say, depending if you got the circuit the first time, you were really strong with it, and then that's one of those that it takes some kids a little bit of time, but they were all successful, and I think they enjoyed the challenge, and it was good. And it was mission 4, so they've been working together for a few missions. So it
Yeah,
was a good challenge for them. And
nice.
again, I was able to differentiate a little bit depending how successful they were.
And so it sounds like for that one, you definitely recommend making a simple circuit ahead of time, before they get into the challenge.
Yeah, I think depending on the background of how much they've done with circuits, we did the paper challenge before. But had I done it with maybe my 8th grade students, they they've done circuits before because we cover it in 5th grade as well. So they might not have needed it. So you can kind of play with what your students know.
Right, perfect. So what was their favorite mission, of all these activities?
Hmm. I, I don't know which one would be their fit. They really enjoyed the rockets. I would say mission 2, and they loved testing those. That
Did you
was
end up getting the Pittsco launcher?
We did, and I think
Awesome.
maybe that was why they were so into it, because we were waiting to get the Pittsco launcher, and they loved it. And that was the last one we had done before we kind of took like a little break on it. So they liked the testing. Then the testing where we were testing, they were hitting the wall. So then the ones that had to move out into the hallway to test, it was just this big suspense. And then kind of talking about the different variables that affected the rocket. I also would say mission 6 with the pneumatic device. That one was really cool because that was something new that none of them had done. I surveyed the
Mm,
class and asked, does anybody know what this is? And they didn't. But the thing with mission 6 was that it was new, but it was reachable, and so they had success pretty quick with that one, which was good before getting to mission 7, which was probably the most challenging. But again, that's why it's mission 7. At that point, they've gone through 6 missions together, working as a group. Um,
yeah.
so mission 6 was really cool because that was just something that never used those tools before.
And that was the same for me. I had never done a pneumatic device. And so I had from a previous, Space Club prize, we had given away a pneumatic robotic arm, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. We should have the kids do it." And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that they enjoyed it.
Yeah, they did enjoy it, and then we had them on display, so, as the other kids were coming in the room, they would be like, "Wow, what is that? That is so cool." So, uh
And that's great idea, and I think having the students present their challenges to other students or teachers or parents is a great way to kinda showcase and practice their communication skills.
yeah.
Um, and okay, so you've talked a lot about this rover being the hardest one. So I think we should give some feedback to teachers that are, wanting to do it because you spent a lot of time coming up with like working with me to like make this doable for students. And we like went back and forth on supplies and the size of the rubber bands and all the things. So lay it out. What should teachers know before getting into this final engineering challenge before the last one?
I think just kind of talking with the students, getting them some good prep time. I do think it's time too, though, that you might want to budget into. The students, I felt like, if I wasn't getting it perfect, they're really creative when they work together. So when they're working together and thinking through it, give them some time to think, but also give them a little pressure for a time constraint, because, you know, sometimes too much time is not always a
Yeah.
good thing. So kind of giving them that balance. Um, I noticed with my groups that worked together really well. So there was one group that worked together really well. They got it pretty quickly. I had another group that they were working together well, but they kept kind of giving up on their designs and starting over and starting over. And they almost weren't improving their design. They were just kind of starting from scratch again. So they ended up with all of these different designs that really weren't as good if they would have just stuck to the one and really fine tuned it. So
Mhm.
I think I could have maybe guided them a little bit more to, stick with that one design and see what we can do with it. They did end up being successful, but they were the last ones to be successful because they were all working through so much of the design. So I think just giving them the advice to really work together, stick with it, make adjustments as you need. I think one thing they said they would have really enjoyed to use was the hot glue gun, which is an optional option. We chose not to, but that would also maybe speed up the time a little bit for Mission 7 because
Mhm.
you're not waiting for glue to dry.
Right.
Um, I think too, just, a carpet would be good. Testing
Right,
on
yeah.
the carpet instead of the
You
hardwood.
made it
We
extra
on the
hard.
hardwood, and that was probably as soon as you got your rover working, it didn't have the traction. So had we tested on the carpet, they maybe would have seen that success a little bit quicker.
And I think when you do it with your students, you kind of had the supplies open-ended because we were trying to figure out what worked. And so the list that we came up right now, I think with teachers, hopefully will make it a little bit easier because this is what worked for your students, right?
Yes, that's true. I did forget that we kind of threw it
Threw
all out.
everything at
They
them.
could pick
Yeah.
their own supplies. So knowing ahead of time what supplies are there to be successful would probably kind of crunch down a little bit of that trying to figure out what to do with all the different supplies that we provided them.
And across the missions, what are your recommendations on supplies? And what I mean is what I've put in the teacher guide is each team needs 3 rubber bands and piece of this and across all the missions, right? We try to be very concise. Like if you're going to build a kit for each team, here's what you need. Do you see any maybe advantages or disadvantages of just a kit of supplies versus like makerspace style, where it's like, go get your supplies and whatever you think's going to work?
Um, I think either one could work. I know there's a lot of things too you put on the list of materials to use,
Like
but
optional,
you
yeah.
might have other things in your classroom that they could use as well. So you can kind of improvise a little bit. Obviously, there's certain materials that are a must have, but a lot of them can also be improvised. So if you don't have it right there, you can get it if you want to add it to them. I did like the idea of putting the materials in a bucket for the students, especially the younger students. A little too much freedom to just kind of go up and get what you need. They end up maybe wasting materials that can be reused. We talked a lot about that because the missions use some similar materials. So maybe if it was note cards or pipe cleaners, I kind
Right.
of encourage them, if you don't use it, keep it in your bucket and we'll use it again for the next mission. Um, so the
Yeah.
materials, as long as you're kind of thinking ahead, you're prepping them, and you know what they must have, you can always improvise a little bit.
And I think that's a good point for grade level, right? If you have younger students, you probably should just have a kit, especially like because some teachers are doing fourth and you did fifth grade versus like an eighth grader can probably be a better judge of what would work. And I'm also thinking through the missions like straw rockets, like you can only use a very specific set of materials, but as you get towards later missions, like even wearable device, like I could see them using, recycled materials and just kind of being creative. Whereas like you get to pneumatic device again, like right, you probably could just come up with like cardboard boxes as a frame. And so maybe thinking through like what time constraints do you want to give your students? And if you have more time, maybe more freedom is okay.
Right. Yeah, I would say because if you have more time, then you can let them think about what materials they would need. So I would sometimes even say, there's a material that you want to use that's not on this list, just let me know, and maybe that could be something you could use. So I didn't want to shut down their creativity completely, so that maybe they might think, oh, well, with my wearable device, I would love to use a paper tube or something like that. Um,
Right.
they kind of knew what was in the classroom and what we've used in the past, and I would kind of leave that open for them.
Yeah, and I think with these challenges, the constraints are really specific where even if you had access to more materials, it doesn't mean it'll be easier, right?
Right. That's
And
almost
so
more
yeah,
materials might make it harder.
harder. Yeah, and I know, like, I remember doing, like, tallest tower was another, one of the missions early on. You can't just give them anything because that's really easy. Like, they'll build a, tower out of books or something is
Right.
easier to do, but when you get to rover, like, it's actually you need to be very precise on the type of stuff and the traction and has to be lightweight. So it's yeah, something to consider when you're putting this on is that's a way you can, like you said, differentiate for younger and older students.
Mhm.
All right. You talked a little bit about things you would do differently, but any other kind of changes that you would make on your experience when running Mission to Mars?
Um, let's see. I definitely would use the sorry.
Who was that?
Oh, Rosie.
That's
Sorry
Rosie.
about that. My dog.
Hi, Rosie. Is there like a bird outside?
Rosie. Rosie. I'm just gonna put her outside.
Okay.
Do you want to just ask the question again?
Yeah. It was like the advice. Okay. Are you like I feel like we've answered everything to this point. Do you feel like we've missed anything?
Let me see. I don't think so. Hold on. Let's see. Implement. I don't know why she's. Oh.
That's fine.
Talked about prep. Oh, I wanted to talk about mission one a little bit too. I like that mission.
Okay. I'll bring it up after this
Okay.
one. Are there
Uh,
any other missions that you think would be good?
no, yeah, because I think I did. I talked about mission four, talked about 6, 7. Okay, yeah, I'll talk about mission one, and then I think we're good. Yeah, just those last two questions.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask it about like the videos because it was mission one and I think five that are the videos, right? Did y'all do the other video?
One, no, we didn't do 5.
Okay.
We just got to 4 before winter break started. So
Okay, so then I'll just ask about one. Perfect.
okay.
Okay. All right. So, Michelle, you've been giving some advice, for teachers, but is there anything else that you would maybe change from your experience in running Mission to Mars?
Um, so I think what I would do for sure is use the Google Slides that were created, the teacher slides for the board. That would just be so easy with everything right there for the students to
Yeah.
visualize. Um, Also, progression of the missions from mission 1 to 8, which we did do, I think is really important. So, kind of make sure if you can try and progress from 1 to 8 and not kind of just jump into like mission 7 or mission 6. Just because I think as the challenges get harder, they can be more successful with those challenging tasks and just kind of growing in the teamwork aspect. Um, see. Oh, I think too, I guess I'm kind of going off what I would just do differently, but just kind of like general advice would be just to try it. I know that sometimes for me, I can read like a large curriculum and be like, okay, that sounds like a lot, or I've never done circuits before, and then you kind of get discouraged and you're not 100% sure, or especially with the rubber band car, maybe never doing the rubber band car. I had never done the rubber band car with my students, so I was a little nervous at first to start, but they really get it. The students really can just kind of dive in, and talking with them about, it's a process for both of us. We're not just, a teacher telling them what to do. It's we're all learning about on it. So just having the confidence to kind of get started and know that you'll be able to be successful is really important.
I feel like being a, engineering or science teacher, it's about taking risk, and you just have to kinda put yourself out there and be like, "All right, students, I'm hoping this will work, but we're gonna learn together." And that's okay, because of course, as you know, part of engineering design is failure,
Mhm.
and you learn from it and adapt the materials. So I think that's good advice.
Yeah, I think they also kind of enjoy when they're kind of challenged and you're challenged too, and you're
Yeah,
working with them instead of telling them what to do. You're kind of also kind of grappling with those materials and kind of thinking through the design process and knowing that they might come up with something that you wouldn't think of, especially working
yeah.
in teams. So just keeping an open mindset kind of makes the learning environment, more of a cooperative working environment.
I like that, yeah. Um, so we talked about the engineering challenges, but I want to hear your perspective on the videos. So one of the differences between Mission to Moon and Mission to Mars is adding in this like video element. And so I know on Mission 1 they were tasked with creating like a team hype video, right? As a way to kick it off. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious to know how that went.
Mission one was awesome. I feel like mission one was, you're just getting started, you've made these teams, and with my group of students that we were doing it with, we've kind of been struggling a little bit with working in groups. And I don't know if it's because of last year being so remote all the time,
Yeah.
just their teamwork and cooperation skills just haven't been at the level that I was hoping. So I was kind of a little bit nervous too to get started. Like, oh no, are they gonna, work well together, or is this gonna just lead to frustration? And as soon as we got started with mission one, I think kind of the hype idea of what we're doing, and we'd read up on Mars and watched some cool videos, and we talked about making our own sparks. That as soon as they got into their groups, they just kind of took off. And one thing with mission one I did was I knew that the students would stress out a little bit about the idea of a video and wanting it to be perfect.
Yeah.
So instead of them, getting it perfect, I said, as engineers, we have time constraints too. We can't just take as long as we want to get it to be perfect. Sometimes we have to, improvise. So I kind of set a goal for them that by the end of the period, they would have their script written, their team mission patch done, and their video complete. And they were able to be successful. And the videos were so cute and, exciting, and they took time to retape them, but they weren't perfect, but they were perfect in the way of where they were at in the time, and that they were able to be successful in the time zone, in the time limit that I gave them. So that was really cool. And then once I watched them back, you could kind of see that even though these groups were maybe struggling a little bit in the beginning, that they were going to develop this idea of teamwork, and they knew. And one of the teams, they had their sparks for like coding, engineering, and math, and
Ooh,
they
nice.
kept talking about it throughout like mission four. They were like, well, I'm the engineering one, and I can help in this way, and I'm the math person. So they kind of kept their sparks and kind of kept it going, which was really cool.
That is awesome. And I can see a great way to wrap up Mission to Mars, because I know you haven't done the final mission yet. The colony project
Not
is,
yet.
like you said, the engineer, the coder, they could build that colony project and then film like a team video about the project and their role, like reflecting, like, bringing back their sparks and how it like helped them. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Definitely. Yeah, that would be awesome, especially just for something to share with the community and save like a keepsake so that they have that. You can share it with your school community or the parents. If you
Yeah.
can't be having full on, science nights or things like that right now, getting
Yeah,
them
and
to talk
actually,
about it.
No, exactly, and a lot of times when we're engineering teachers, we think, like, "I need a physical prototype," right? Like, something to actually build, but these videos are something the kids will have, forever, like, they can keep on to it, hold on to it, and I remember my first year teaching Space Club, we did a PSA on what it's like to live on the International Space Station, and so we had the kids pretend like they were in zero gravity and, like, floating
Uh,
around, and it was, like, the silliest, video, and I played it at a family night, and the parents were, like, sobbing. They were so proud of their kids in this, like, silly video, and I was like, "Wow, okay."
right, right. You don't notice a lot of the things that they're
Yeah,
doing, parents don't realize what's going on in the classroom. So
yeah,
it would even be cool to, take little shots throughout the time period and at the end put together like a whole video of them, in the building process and the thinking process.
ooh, I like
It'd
that.
be good just kind of culmination of like everything that they've done, and then the students would enjoy watching, wow, look at from mission 1 up to mission 8 and like what we've done throughout this time period. It'd
Oh,
be
that's
fun.
cool. Yeah. And so to wrap things up, there's a lot of different, I guess, directions you could take Mission to Mars, right? There's a bunch of supplemental resources and extensions, and of course, there's like the core, design challenge and activity. But I'm curious to hear what were your main goals for this mission to Mars? Like, what were you focused on for the kids to walk away with?
So I think there's a mix of goals, but there's an engineering you want them to walk away with, science goals, career goals, motivation goals, working together. So I think the building challenges they were familiar with, but often only in a short period. So, and I like, we do a building challenge for one day and do a little reflection and then just kind of like, okay, on to something different. So this was new to have such, in-depth building challenges that built on each other over
Mhm.
time. Science concepts, there's tons that we covered. Things like just learning about Mars. I mean, that's not in your typical science curriculum to really sit down and learn about Mars.
Yeah.
As I said, the circuits, that was new. We had to learn about that, the pneumatic devices, how rockets fly, how the rubber band car was going to work, what are the scientific reasons for it, friction. So there were tons throughout all of the missions, much more than I'm even saying right now. Career wise, each career that was mentioned in the readings often followed up with a video. One of the career videos actually was about a biomedical engineer, and the video happened to be 20 minutes away from our house. It's in Cleveland.
What?
Kids were like, whoa, this is crazy. This is like, I pass there all the time.
No
And it
way.
just happened to be that way. So they thought that was really cool. And then we also incorporated the career chats during our indoor lunchtime. So during lunch, we would watch some of the career chats in there.
Oh, cool.
And then just the motivation and agency from the students was incredible. Just, I had students emailing when they were absent, curious how they were going to make their rockets and nervous that they were missing out.
Oh.
And, they were trying to figure out, like, well, how can I do this at home? Or how can I do this when I get back? So that's not something typical when the student's absent to, them really want to wish that they were there.
Wow, that's really cool to hear. I love that. And there's something about space that really just captures every kid. At least that's been my experience. There like whenever I would run Space Club, it'd be like the band nerds and the football players and everybody in between was just like,
Right.
this is cool. Is that your experience with this?
Yes, definitely. I think everybody was, so on board and so interested in what we were going to do each day and what we were going to learn about. So I think it's great because there's so much freedom within the curriculum. You've got your guide and a way to do it, but you can expand in certain areas. You can um, use all the different supplemental materials that are there to kind of really just make this a full, well-rounded, overall experience for the kids. Like, as I said, I did the career chats during lunch. You can throw it in different times of the day, at different times of the year, just to kind of keep them interested. And then there's also, everything that's going on current. So letting them know, well, this is what happened today, and with the rover or in Mars. So
And if anybody watching is in our Facebook group, we have like a Space Club Mission Control group. I've been trying to post every week, like kind of current events. So
Mhm.
there's like the NASA Artemis program and new rovers and all this stuff. And I think there's just so much exciting NASA, SpaceX things that make it even better.
Right. So even if we're not, doing challenges that day or right in the middle of the Space Club curriculum, I can always, pull up a current event and read it to them in the morning or something like that, where they can get interested, or post it in the Google Classroom, just to kind of keep them knowing that this is just
Yeah,
something that's going to keep growing and we're going to keep learning about.
that's cool. And they can hopefully someday be part of it if they want, right? They
Yes,
could be that next person, first human to go to Mars is going to be this generation.
right, right. So
Great.
exciting.
Yeah. All right. So, any kind of final words of advice for teachers that are about to start Mission to Mars with their students?
I think that it's just important to know that it's going to be a really lasting memory for the students, and that they couldn't wait to come to science to see what type of mission we were going to explore each day. So, and I think just dive in and try it out, and you'll be really, really happy to see the results that you get.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, Michelle, and all your work in developing this curriculum, testing it out. Your
Thank you.
students, thank you to your students for being our
Thank you.
guinea pigs.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and we'll kind of keep you posted on how Mission 8 goes for us, because we do still want to finish it up.
Sounds great.